There's a lot of the stuff's proprietary. We were just talking about Kratom and stuff like that. I don't think we should be talking about that now.
Well, the thing about it is we've already started.
Hmm. Where are we live at?
So right now we're on powerproject.live. That would be the YouTubes,
Hmm.
and we should be live on your Facebook right now.
When would then be now?
Then is nowish.
The answer is soon. That's what he says in Spaceballs. You ever see Spaceballs?
Yeah, it's just been a while.
He it's
Here.
when he's watching the part where he Lord Helmet, he smashes into the thing because the freaking door flies open or whatever,
Yeah.
and he watches it in like rewind. He's like, never play this part again. And then they end up watching now, and he keeps moving around, and as he's moving around in real time.
Hmm.
He's like, well, what time is this? And the guy's like, it's now. He's
Oh
like,
yeah.
now? He goes, yeah, it's now. He goes, okay, well, when will then be now? And he goes, soon.
I just remember the part where like your Schwartz is as big as mine.
Yeah. Oh, how could anybody ever forget that part? Any of you kids out there that have never seen
Got it.
Spaceballs,
It's a must watch.
you got to go do your homework and watch Spaceballs. I was always upset, and I'm still upset actually, that they never made a sequel to it. I know sometimes sequels kind of ruin things, but man, I just thought that movie could use an encore. Like that was just, it was so damn good. Fucking Spaceballs. Some movies that are funny have had pretty good sequels to them, like Ace Ventura comes to mind.
Hmm.
Um, Dumb and Dumber had a really bad, a really bad sequel to it. So it's not always good to have a sequel with some of these comedies. Sometimes they run out of ammunition.
The most recent one was pretty good. I don't even know what the title was, but it was like the third Dumb and Dumber.
Oh yeah,
It wasn't too bad.
they just keep making them dumber and dumber, dumber and
Dumberist.
dumberist.
Yeah.
Anyway, we hopped on here today because of a couple things. I want to update everybody on what the hell's going on. I was in France, and it's true. They actually, when I went to the other side of France, they actually don't wear pants, and there was ladies doing a dance. So I've heard that as a kid that they don't wear pants on the other side of France, and it was true.
Were there any hairy armpits?
I don't know. I wasn't really looking at the
I
armpits.
heard that was a thing.
I did see I did see some very beautiful women, but I also noticed that there was just, for whatever reason, just a lot more guys. There's a lot more dudes. There's a lot more sticks than there are chicks. At least where I was. But yeah, France and England. I mean, it was an unbelievable trip. Family had a really good time, and we were able to do it up fat, which was super cool. Um, I also wanted to point out that this power project, the price of admission to get into this power project is not free. It's not it's not cheap. It's not inexpensive. It is always going to be worth it. That's all you need to know is that we are here for you guys. The Power Project. We're making it live. We're doing lots of things. Andrew's been working really hard. Andrew had to go to SpaceX, which we can't talk about where that is, but he had to go to Arizona, and
You've
he
already
had.
said too much. You said too
Did I
much.
mess it up?
You're already halfway there, so go for it.
Yeah. Andrew had to go to Arizona, and he nearly got arrested, but he had to go to this SpaceX facility that they have there, let's just say. And he had to acquire a special satellite. And so now we're going to be doing more stuff live. And we're going to be doing more stuff kind of in correspondence with other people around the globe so that I don't always have to have them here in person. There is nothing better than having people here in person. Um, but sometimes it's just not possible. There's people that are just too fucking busy. Some of the people that I'm getting to know better, they just simply don't have the time to make it here to Super Training Gym. And by the way, who the hell wants to come to Sacramento, California, right?
I kind of like it.
I love it. I love where we live. I really do. But other people are appalled by it. Let's just
Yeah,
say. The other thing I wanted
jerks.
to talk about, I'll just touch upon it a little bit before we move on. But having some family time, it really gives you some good perspective. As I'm getting older, I'm starting to recognize that perspective is really crucial. Um, Having perspective on how somebody else feels, having perspective on how your wife or how your husband, how your significant other feels when you do certain things, or having perspective on how your children feel about you and with you, and all these different things. It's just really, it can really be an eye-opening thing to go through as a parent, and to really, you start to just have an appreciation for things on a much higher level. Obviously, when you travel, there's going to be some stresses, but we were able to kind of go first class, and we were able to do things on a large scale. Now, the thing that's important about that, and the reason why I bring it up, is not to show off, and like the pictures of us, in that first class suite, basically all by ourselves, and some of the treatment that we got because of the tickets that we got and things like that. It's not. Of course, I'm very proud of it, and of course, I'm dying to share it with everybody, right? Because it's fucking cool. Um, but it's not really just to show off. It's also to show you guys that hard work can pay off. And I don't do that. That's not something that I do all the time. I don't splurge like that all the time. I have a nice house. I have nice cars. I have some nice clothes, but I don't feel like and maybe as I become wealthier, who knows? I don't feel my lifestyle's too extravagant, although on occasion, when it's time, we spend the money and we splurge on things, such as we have a beach house in Malibu that we're going to in July, or such as flying overseas first class, and the different hotels that we got while we were there. But it's taken me a long time to get to this spot. I'm somebody that uh, as a kid, and even as I went past being just a kid, and moved past high school and tried to go to college and failed at that, tried to become a professional wrestler and failed at that. I'm somebody that has, just like many of you guys and girls, I'm somebody that was scared at one point. I was somebody that didn't know where I was going. I didn't really have any clue. I will say this about myself. I will say that I've always been resilient, and I did always believe in myself. I always had almost like an unreasonable it's almost unreasonable for me to think that I was ever going to turn into anything, because I didn't really have a particular skill set. But I always knew that something would turn into something over a period of time if I just put in work. And so I hung in there long enough. And as you get older, you start to see that that's what matters. It's just hanging in there. Like, let's take Mike O'Hearn for example, right? Mike O'Hearn is in like his late 40s, right? Late 50s. Now, even somebody that is not as big and as jacked as Mike O'Hearn, let's take Mark Sisson for example. Mark Sisson is like 60. I want to say Mark Sisson's like 63. Mark Sisson has Primal Kitchen. Mark Sisson is a big time keto proponent, and also very, very well off, and does really well in his own right in a lot of different respects. But Mark Sisson is jacked, and my point is, even though Mark Sisson is not nearly as jacked as Mike O'Hearn, he's not nearly as big. What if Mark Sisson's life, when you go back and look at it, say, man, shit, Mark Sisson was squatting 185 and 225 when he was in his 70s. And Mike O'Hearn was able to hold on to that until he was 50, and then everything kind of slid downhill, which I don't see happening for him. He'll probably hold on to it. But my point is, if you can just fucking hang in there, you can out survive people. My mother-in-law kind of says this all the time. She said she's always felt like she was ugly. She never felt like she was real pretty. She goes, now I'm 70 years old, and I look at the other women who are 70 years old. She's like, I hung on long enough, and she goes, I'm the hot one now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes for anything in life. If you can just fucking hang in there for long enough, you're going to be good at squats. If you can hang in there long enough, you're going to be good at photography. You're going to be good at videography. You're going to be good at, you name it. If you hang in there long enough and it's something that you really desire, you're going to end up being good at it.
Yeah, it's kind of like stand-up comedians. They'll always talk
How
about
hard would that be?
Impossibly hard. I can't imagine. But they talk about all the time, like they have to go up like night after night after night, and they'll be horrible for who knows how long, however long it takes. But then eventually they crack the code or whatever, and then they start killing on stage. And then they just love life. But yeah, that's
I was talking to name dropping coming up. I
here
was
we go.
talking to Joe Rogan the other day. We were
Mm-hmm.
texting back and forth, and my brother and I have been talking to him a lot about Kratom,
Mm-hmm.
and he's excited about it, and he took it, and he was like, he's blown away. He's like, I don't know what the hell is happening, but I took the dosage that you guys told me to take. He took the type of kratom that we told him to take, which is from a company called Urban Ice, if you want to look it up and investigate it yourself. And he was like, dude, my anxiety's fucking shot. It's gone. It's like just
Wow.
non-existent when he's taking kratom. Now, I'm not going to sit here and promote it to you guys and say that that's going to be the result for everybody. That's what he has felt off of it. And I just think that, people should do some of their own research, do some of their own investigating, poke around. There's quite a bit of negative information on Kratom on the internet, and there's quite a bit of positive information. Look it over, check it out. My brother talks about it quite a bit. My brother just did a Kratom movie. I was just in Los Angeles this morning, actually flying back from seeing the premiere of his movie last night. The
That's
movie,
so cool. How was it?
it was fucking great.
Yeah.
He did it. He did a good. My brother in some weird way is like he's kind of unassuming sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now he's his figure, his body, his physique and stuff is getting a lot better, and he's a lot leaner. And he's always been a strong guy, but he's getting stronger. Um, but he's a little bit of a sleeper in terms of, I guess you wouldn't think that he'd have like an artistic side to him,
Mm-hmm.
and he really does. There's an art to making films, and there's definitely an art to making documentaries, and he does a fucking great job of it. He does a really good job. He does a really good job of making movies, and so um, I really was impressed with the film. It talks a lot about the ups and downs of kratom, the positives, the negatives, in addition to talking about um, why people would use it. So a lot of the film talked about the opioid addictions that are going on and all the deaths that have happened from that. And in addition to that, um, it was also just talking about how the different effects that people had with kratom. And so it was my brother did a good job, and it always has. All of his films always have a personal touch, and that's what we're working on with our nutrition movie that we're working on, is we're working on adding a personal touch to it, because right now we just have a lot of interviews, and so we have to go back and we got to interview my mom, my dad, and we got to get just more of a personal story in there, which is not hard, which is the reason why we haven't filmed any of it yet, is because we know that it's just there
Mm-hmm.
whenever we want to film it. But from an emotional standpoint, it would be difficult
Yeah.
because talking to my mom about her losing weight and everything else is it's a very loaded topic, and it doesn't do anybody any good to go in and say you eat like shit. It's got to be a more gentle approach. My mom, just like thousands and thousands and maybe millions of Americans, she's tried to lose weight a bunch of times, and she's succeeded many times. My mom, in the course of her life, has probably lost 200 pounds or so. She lost 20 here, 20 there, 40 there, 60 there. Um, anyway, that's kind of there's a long story kind of associated with all that. But what we're going to talk about here today is we're going to talk about breaking out. And we're going to talk about how you do it. How do you execute some of this? And I also wanted to show you guys, because I think this is important. Like I prepare for stuff, right? But I also am a big believer in just fucking going with the flow
Mm-hmm.
and having stuff come from your heart and not have a lot of stuff rehearsed. And so when we do this podcast, sometimes I'll take more notes, but as we go, I'll take more notes. Right now, all I have is this sheet, which has this on it right here, which I'm showing I got us on Instagram Live for a few minutes, but it just says breaking out, and it says AKA starting out. And that's pretty much what's on there. That's pretty much all that's on there. I wrote down one other thing on there, which I'll get to in a few minutes. My point of showing that is that this is not like a rehearsed thing. This is not like a speech that I'm preparing. I feel that it's important to have it just kind of flow. Lil Wayne actually, I thought like what Lil Wayne said is amazing. Now, Lil Wayne is obviously an artist, recording artist that's on just on an amazing level. But he said, hey, if I write stuff down, that's the stuff that people can take. And he's like, he didn't believe in writing shit down. He said every once in a while he'll write down a word and then he'll play off the word, and he would kind of just go from there. But I kind of feel the same way. I don't feel like I need to have a whole script over here to talk about breaking out. So how this kind of came to be is here at Slingshot we have Joey who works in our store. We have a store here at 855 Riverside Parkway, suite number 10. If you ever want to come check out Slingshots, hip circles, gangster wraps, knee sleeves, all of that, we sell everything here. Store's open every single day, Monday through Monday, and you come check it out. But Joey was watching an old podcast I did with our boy Tim Ferriss, who now lives in Austin, Texas. He used to live out here in the San Francisco area. And in that interview, I actually think it's one of the better interviews that anyone's ever done with me. It really gives you some insight as to who I am, because we talk about the powerlifting career, we talk about the business, and you get to kind of see most people don't really talk to me that much about the business side of things. And I think that, as I was mentioning with my brother's unassuming. I think that I might be similar when it comes to this side of me, because I feel that I've been clever, I've been creative, and I've been mindful. I've been paying attention the entire time. Almost I almost feel like I've been kind of like waiting for this moment to like explode, and I still don't feel like I've fully exploded yet. I still don't feel that I've arrived yet. There's a Mike Tyson clip, and I don't know how you can look it up or how you can pull it up, but there's a Mike Tyson clip that is very like, it's very close to my heart. There's actually two clips of him. One is him coming to the ring, and it's a documentary that was made on Mike Tyson. And when he's coming to the ring, it's in black and white. And I think, if I can remember correctly, this is all in the same scene maybe. So before this happens, before Tyson starts going towards the ring, he's a Golden Gloves boxer. He's an amateur boxer. He is in a parking lot. He's got his gloves on. He's got his shorts on. He looks ready to fight. His coach is with him, Teddy Atlas, who I've met before because I used to train at the Catskill gym in Albany, or in Catskill, New York. I used to train at that same exact gym. So I've met Teddy Atlas before. But Teddy Atlas is talking to him, and Mike Tyson starts to cry because Mike Tyson's about to fight. And Teddy Atlas is like, Mike, what's wrong? He's like, man, I don't know. Like, Mike Tyson is folding up right before his very eyes. He's a 17-year-old kid. He's getting really upset. He's probably has a lot of anxiety at that point. Probably thinks that he can't win. He probably is terrified that the other guy is going to beat him. He's probably scared that all the training that he did is going to blow up in his face, and this other guy's going to punch him out. I mean, he's going in a ring, right? And he's going to duke it out with somebody else. So there's even just a prospect of getting hurt. But more so than anything, he's folding up because he's lost confidence in himself. And his trainer comes over to him and just starts rubbing on the back of his neck. Doesn't really say much at first. And he's like, Mike, calm down. He's like, this is going to be your event. It's going to be your day. And you could see Mike Tyson start to kind of calm down. He goes, Mike, I know you have a lot of anxiety. I know you're upset, but you did all the training. He goes, what happens when you get in that ring? He goes, when I get in that ring, I'm the killer. He goes, that's right. When you get in the ring, you're the killer. And he goes, so what are you going to do when you get in the ring? And he goes, I'm going to open up like a son of a bitch. And he says that, and he does his little nervous tick with his neck, and he's fucking on his way. When he goes to walk to the ring, it's black and white. And the music that kicks in, the second that he gets into the ring, the second he like slides and dips underneath the ring ropes, boom, it turns into color. As if like now he can see more clearly, right?
Yeah.
And right as he says, as soon as I step in that ring, I'm the killer then. And the music hits, and it just shows him just fucking people up.
Yeah.
And I feel like my life feels similar to that. I feel like I'm that scared kid. I feel like I'm the guy crying, who's upset, who's ready to explode into something because I've been fighting and defending everything that I've been doing and working so hard towards stuff for so fucking long that people don't really have an idea of the amount of rejection and the amount of things that I deal with on a daily basis. Man, I get stiff armed and fucking Heisman trophied every day of my life because I'm trying to get people on the podcast, trying to get people here at Super Training Gym. I'm trying to communicate with people. I'll fly to them. I'll fucking interview them in their bathroom for if they got 3 minutes in their bathroom. I don't care where it is. I'm trying to just to figure it out. And it's that's the way that it should be. You guys shouldn't fucking care. Any of the effort, any of the different things that I'm working towards, those aren't your problems. You're just tuning in because you want to see a good show, because you want to see, what we have to offer you, and that's the way it is. I don't fucking give a fuck about your problems either. I'll try to talk you through some things if I have experience with some of the things that you're dealing with, because I'm the people's coach, and that's what we do here at Super Training Gym. But it's not your business to be overly concerned with the obligations that I have or with the amount of things that I try to do. The point is that you have to know that if you put yourself out there, you are on the front lines and you're going to get fucking hit. You're going to get shot at. You're going to get grenades thrown your way. And I'm not trying to by any means to make any sort of real comparison towards war, because I'll never downplay that. I appreciate all the people that fight for our country. But you catch my drift. If you put yourself out there, there's going to be a lot of stones thrown at you. You're going to be made fun of. People are going to talk shit. People are going to say all kinds of stuff. And so the question that we're dealing with for today's podcast is, how do you take that first step? Why do you take that first step? And when? Like, well, how do you know? How do you know when you're ready? How do you know when you're ready to even take that first step? I'm still on Instagram Live, so I'm going to pop off of here because we are on Facebook Live and we're also on YouTube Live, and you guys can go check that out over there. Anyway, powerproject.live. So I'll hop off that. Bam. That's just to give our little IG followers notification that we're live here on Facebook, and we're live here on powerproject.live, which is on YouTube. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And what we're talking about today is breaking out, starting out. How do you know when to take that first step? How do you know when you're ready to do any of that? And how do you even have the balls to do it? Before we do that, Andrew, you got any questions that you want to kind of add before I go diving in?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's along the same lines of what you're already talking about. But my question to you, because you kind of mentioned it, that you always felt you were going to be something or do something. But like, when did you know that people needed to hear your voice?
There's been a couple times where more recently it's been crazier because there's been more people saying that I've helped them with addiction and some different things like that, which is, I would say that anybody that becomes popular on YouTube or Instagram or really anywhere, but you're probably not going to identify as much with like Tom Cruise or some of these huge celebrity actors, right? But
Yeah.
some of these people that you get to see more humanized through Instagram and through YouTube, I think when they start to relate to you more and they hear my story about my brother Mad Dog who passed away from drug addiction, when they hear my brother Chris's story, we were able to save him and he's been sober for 4 years. When they hear these things and they hear about the diet that we choose to do, the war on carbs, and when they start to hear and see a lot of the progress, that's when I started recognizing just how powerful it really is. So that's actually kind of more of a recent occurrence. But what I would say is I always felt that the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in, like, what can you do? Who are you? It's very simple. People are out there and they're looking for things that they want to hear about, things that they want to learn about. And if you wanted to get stronger, I was the guy to go to figure out how to get stronger. I still can be that guy from time to time, but I just don't coach as much. And there's a lot more sharks in the water, and I've chosen to kind of move aside. I got a lot of friends that execute really well with programming and stuff like that, so I choose not to be in that space to make room for them because I think that they deserve their opportunity to work hard and to be able to get paid well for it. But in the different things that I'm trying to execute, when I start to think about why people needed to hear my voice, is as simple as they wanted to get better. And what I didn't really recognize at first was, and I sort of recognized it, but I didn't recognize it through and through. I didn't recognize it in the message I was putting out. I didn't recognize that it had nothing to do with getting stronger.
Hmm.
For me, I thought that that's all that mattered. And now I recognize that that is a large percentage of it. It's a large chunk of it because that's what people associate me with. But the weight and the strength and the different things people seen, the 1080 squat and the 854 bench, and even some of the stuff I did raw, those are all in a really confined space in my life. I'm 41 years old, and those things only really happen in about a 4 or 5 year span. The amount of time that I was up over 300 pounds for me being 41 years old probably equates to about 2 years worth. I don't even know if it was 2 consecutive years worth. I'm just saying it's probably, whatever. It was probably around 800 days worth or whatever that would equal out to be. So some of the things that I'm even known for, they're not a true representation of who I am exactly. It's just what people have seen because that is kind of some of the stuff that we put out there. So it gets to be a little bit confusing at times, but there's been some situations that have made me recognize just how much people want to hear my voice and just how much people are looking forward to the different things that I'm writing or the different things I'm putting out there.
Mm.
When I worked for Dave Tate and I worked for EliteFTS.com, I had a blog on there under the name Jackass, which was just for fun. It was just me fucking around. I messed with everybody else all the time. I talked a lot of shit. Dave Tate thought it'd be a good idea because I had the wrestling background. And so I was able to kind of come out of my shell a little bit through some of those things. I can talk more about that in a minute, but what ended up happening, what ended up being a joke, ended up turning into something very serious. I was Jackass, and it was like I would write these absurd workouts that weren't even true. I would talk about like doing burpees and bench pressing 405 in between doing like I just wrote these crazy things, and the stuff is still there. It's still on the website. It's like buried deep in there, but it's on there somewhere. What started to happen though is I started to learn. I was already very obsessed with exercise. I was very obsessed with the nutrition. I was very obsessed with how performance-enhancing drugs play into everything. I was very obsessed with powerlifting and powerlifting gear. I was just fucking nuts about it all. I was probably about 22 years old or so. No idea of any sort of direction that I was going in, but I was also very happy. I wasn't at around that time. Actually, I should say I was probably 23 or 24, just a little bit older, because I was already with my wife at that time. My wife, I've mentioned many times, been a huge integral part of everything that has been going on, and I don't know. I've never really had depression or anything like that. I don't, and I think a lot of that has to do with finding her when I was pretty young. I think that's played into it because I've always been relatively pretty happy. But anyway, as I was working for Elite and as I started kind of messing around, I'm talking shit with all these people. Well, Dave Tate kind of outs me and lets everybody know that it was me that was fucking with everybody. Well, now everybody hates me, and there's people actually at Westside Barbell that hated me, which is a problem because there's some big freaks in there. And it was weird for a little while going in there, and they'd be like, "You said this about me and da 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 da," and it just got to be it got to be awkward. But what started to happen from there is I started once he kind of let the cat out of the bag. I was like, all right, well, I'll stop fucking around with the workouts and I'll just post my real workouts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in some weird way, this is going to sound really weird, especially due to the various circumstances that have happened. I became like a an earlier version of Silent Mike. A
Mm.
lot of people tuned in to what Silent Mike was doing here at Super Training Gym because he was very relatable. Because
Mhm.
he wasn't a giant fucking monster. He didn't look like Filipino Thunder. He didn't look like Brian Shaw. He didn't look like me. He was a strong, in shape kid, weighed about 200 pounds, which the 200-pound mark is a really good weight because if you're 170, you can relate to him, and if you're 220, you can relate to him. Even somebody who's 240 can be like, oh, he's still, even a smaller framed guy, somebody like Ryan Spencer, who's $165 or so. A lot of these people can really relate to somebody that's in that weight category. And for me, at the time, I was kind of hovering around 220 pounds or so. And, I was able to put in a lot of work in a short period of time with my workouts. The workouts were, the work, I got through a lot of work during each workout. I was getting stronger and stronger. People started looking at this and like, wait a minute, this guy was like not really squatting that well with, 365 just a few months ago. And now he's squatting, whatever it was, 485 for reps or something,
Mm.
they're seeing a progression.
And how old were you?
I'm about 24.
Okay.
About 24 at that point, and they're starting to see some pretty good progression. I think at one point I pulled like a 675 deadlift. The squat started to kind of come around too. Then I started wearing a little bit more powerlifting gear, and in my time at Westside, I started moving around like 6 plates. Which is like 585 pounds, 600-ish, somewhere in there. Nothing crazy. I was not remotely close to what the guys in there were doing, but it was the start of something. Being in that environment is so tense. It's so intense. It's people might walk into Super Training and go, "Oh fuck, what's going on in here?" Oh man, the music's loud. Like, and those guys are pretty big. But we're a bunch of pussycats compared to what they had going on at Westside Barbell. Westside Barbell would be if you were driving across the country and you stopped in like Arkansas and you just really needed to take a piss somewhere and you walked into like a biker bar that had a particular biker gang in there.
Mhm.
And you went to walk in and it just like the music stopped the second you walked in. That's what it was like to walk in Westside Barbell. You're just like, I do not belong here.
Mhm.
I'm the odd man out. I got no, and for me, being 215, 220, being in that range, it did feel like I had no business being in there because everybody else, the whole gym, everyone's 300 pounds. Louis Simmons was really big into the guys being as big and as powerful as possible. He talked about conditioning work and stuff too, but he wanted them to be heavy. And like some of the lighter guys in there, they were just bench only guys. And Louis didn't even pay attention to half those guys. Louis wanted guys being 320 and up, basically. And so being in that environment and kind of forcing myself to be in that environment, being in an environment really just being super uncomfortable was a big part of all of it. I remember at Westside Barbell was so intense that the monolift is towards the back of the gym. And when new people would come in, they'd always hang out by the garage, by the door. They'd hang out by the doorway. And you knew when people were legitimate, they'd walk all the way in because the monolift is where it's at. That's how you're going to learn is not only to actually participate, but you're definitely going to have to, at the very least, going to have to walk through the gym. And a big builder of strength at Westside Barbell was the squat. So if you were too scared to get anywhere near that, where these guys are squatting, 9 and 10 and 11 plates on the bar with bands and screaming and bleeding and yelling motherfucker at each other. No one's really talking, but every once in a while there's random yelling and screaming, and there's chalk flying everywhere. Then you at least had what it took to learn from Louis Simmons, because he's not going to talk to you if you're not proactive. The other thing that would happen in there is that if you weren't going to sweat, then he wasn't going to talk to you either. And I remember, I'm a huge fan of Charles Poliquin, and at the time, uh, I remember Charles came into the gym and he checked it out, and Louis' story to people whenever Louis, because I was kind of like almost like a right hand man for Louis for a little bit, not business wise, but just I was just I would just stay by his side just because I wanted to learn from him. So I was hanging with him a lot, because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could. I wanted to absorb all this. And I think that that's a key factor in me being successful in some things is I always wanted to rub elbows with the best people that I possibly could. And so as other people would come into the gym, these other strength coaches and people that wanted to coach in the NFL and people that wanted to coach professional soccer teams and with strength training and stuff and utilize some of Louis' principles, uh, these people would ask Louis about other coaches. They'd say, "Oh, what do you think about this guy? What do you think about Pavel Testosterines and this guy and that guy?" Everyone's got their favorite guy that they reference, right? And whenever he was asked about Charles Poliquin, he would say, "Oh yeah, yeah, Charles Poliquin. He's like he's nice. He sat right there," and he pointed to a chair. And it's like the guy was like, "Yeah, well, like the guy like try to rephrase his question. He's like, no, I mean like, what, like, he's really big in like tempo training. Like you go slower on the way down and, slower on the way up to build hypertrophy." And Louis go, yeah, he's real nice. He sat right there. Meaning that when he came into my gym, he didn't do shit.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do anything. And he's like, that to me always stood out. Cause it's like, you just didn't even have the balls to even try anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Louis, kind of marked you. And I always kind of took note of that because if I don't have the balls or the guts to talk to you about my book, The War on Carbs, then maybe I'm not the right person to be selling it. Maybe I'm not even that confident in it. Maybe I don't care about it that much. The only way I'm going to be able to really truly sell these products and to really try to blow things out is to have the strength and have the courage to communicate. I gave a book to my Uber driver, and that's not the first time I've given out a lot of books. I just throw them in my backpack, and people start talking about nutrition or training or whatever it might be, and I'm telling them about the slingshot, and yeah, I mean, you've seen it firsthand. We'll just put somebody in something.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, oh, fuck, here's this guy. You throw a hip circle on some random chick, right?
Yeah.
And all those things are huge factors. And what broke me in even before that, though, because I was as a younger kid, I was really shy. And I can go back to that in a minute. But when I was pro wrestling I was probably around 21. So that was before I got to Westside, and while I was at Westside, I was pro wrestling, and a little bit after, but that was kind of towards the tail end of my quote unquote wrestling career. I think I started wrestling probably at about 20, 21 years old, and that really broke a lot of barriers for me. So if you can kind of envision this, imagine just having to go. You're very fearful of, let's say, talking in front of a camera, right? But now you're asked to, like, I don't know, recite a script for a play or something like that in front of, like, you just go to some random bar, and that's your homework for the day. It's just to like recite some fucking poetry or something, right? That we never did exercises like that necessarily, but the point being is that the wrestling that I was doing then is not directly related to this, because there's so many different formats of all these things. What broke me in and what helped make me less scared to get in front of cameras and to get in front of people was to be physical in front of people, so the lifting that I did at Westside, which came later after wrestling, after the wrestling career, the lifting that I did at Westside, that ended up breaking a lot of these habits of me being shy too, because the liftings are performance. When we do max effort work, even just as you got stronger and stronger, more and more people would come around you, more and more people would look at what you're doing, and even just competing and getting into meets and getting on the platform. Those things kind of broke down some barriers. But even before that, with the pro wrestling, was just getting in the ring, being physical. And in pro wrestling, you're trying to tell a story with your actual match. There's a good guy, there's a bad guy, and the good guy is always going to play by the rules. The bad guy is always going to cheat at every turn. The good guy is always going to outwork, outsmart the bad guy. And the bad guy, every single time that he's getting the short end of the stick, he's going to cheat time and time again. He's going to do something while the ref's not looking. And his cheating's going to get worse.
It's going to cut every corner.
Yeah. His cheating's going to get worse and worse as the match progresses.
And then he's going to tell on the other wrestler once the referee turns around. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was always annoying.
You've seen this story too many times. But like again, so that's like me almost like going out and doing a play, and I guess it's like an expression of yourself, right? In some way, how you acted in the ring was a character, and you had to try to make a character, and you try to
like believe in that character.
Yeah, you try to believe in that character. You try to create a character. You try to create, strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. And some of these different like sign off things are all. When I was wrestling, I'd say I'm smelly and I'm sticking to it because the way that came about is like they were like, what do you want your wrestling name to be? And I was like, well, I don't want some weird name. I've been just called Smelly since the time I was a kid, so let's just roll with that. And they're like, that's stupid. I'm like, yeah, that's okay. A lot of the other names are stupid too. Like the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, if you think about it, it sounds kind of stupid. Macho Man. Any of these names are all kind of weird, right?
They got to be a little silly.
Yeah, it's theatrical, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I'd say I'm smelly and I'm sticking to it, because when I mentioned that to the agents and the people that put the matches together, they were like, that's a stupid name. And I'm like, no, I'm smelly and I'm sticking to it. That's just the way it's going to be. Ended up becoming like a tagline for me. And then, you develop, you could, if you develop in speaking in general, if you start to develop a rhythm or start to develop certain maybe like catchphrases almost, especially for like YouTube, it's popular. That's what people do. People always sign off the same way. Omar Isuf, he always says, if you like the video, like the damn video, right? And they have these things that will kind of stick in your mind. Well, all that comes from pro wrestling. We've been doing that for a long time. And even some people on TV will have a specific sign off that they do every single time. I would say I'm smelly and I'm sticking to it. I'd also say I'm going to bring the pain and leave a stain.
That's great.
Because it's like, just, I don't know, it's kind of, at least there's like a little bit of humor in there. You're like, stain. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? But yeah, you're trying to develop a character. And then also when it came to pro wrestling, obviously there's a theatrical part of it where you have to, get up and give a promo. And I've talked about that here on the podcast before. You guys seen me do a wrestling promo type thing when I did the thing on Michael Tren. That was kind of a full blown wrestler mode almost there. And I learned how to communicate in front of people, and I learned how to think on my feet, because they would just say, hey, you're doing this. You're going to talk about A, B, and C. You need to hit all these points. And you got 30 seconds. And so that's also how I became aware of like the time. Sometimes when we're videoing, you'll be like, okay, well, we got to make, back when Instagram was like 15 seconds and some things like that, or we try something for a minute because we're making an ad or whatever it was that we're doing. I'm usually pretty good about, cutting it right around the right time. And a lot of that is just practice too. And a lot of that comes from wrestling.
Yeah. And that was all usually like freestyle off the top of the head type stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, there's probably some people that, if they wrote it down and really tried to memorize it, that it'd probably really do them some good. But for me, I never really liked it. But I have talked about this on the podcast a little bit before. Have a topic that you feel confident in. If you're going to talk about something that you don't know much about, if I'm going to sit here and try to rattle off, information about force production and the central nervous system, I'm going to fall short. You guys are going to quickly see that I don't really know what I'm talking about when it comes to that. I only know the peripheral stuff on that. I only know kind of the outer layer of it. I don't know the inner workings of it all. And so if you're going to talk about something and you're wondering, how do I come out of my shell? How do I break out? The way that you break out is to first of all, you have to just start. That's why it's called starting out. You have to literally just go. And when you start out, you're not going to break out. Breaking out happens at a much different time. But you are kind of, when you're starting out, you're breaking out of your own shell, but you're not like breaking out and breaking into anything because you're not anywhere yet. You're going to have like 10 followers or 10 people that watch what you're doing. But my advice is to pick something that you feel strong in, pick something that you feel comfortable about.
Mm-hmm.
If you know cars, talk about that. If you know a lot about training, talk about that. Or even if you just know, even if you just have, another way to look at it is, let's forget knowledge for a second, because who really cares about knowledge? What do we really care about? We really care about experience, right? We don't really care about knowledge. We don't really care about some guy talking about, what he would do to some really hot chick. We want to hear the experience, right? We want to hear, hey man, I tagged that shit over there, right? And we want the guy to give up the goods and tell us what happened, right?
Details, bro.
Yeah, we need the details.
Well, speaking of girls, Joey Eastlick, not our Joey out front, he wants to know how he can gain confidence with talking to girls. Now, I know you've said in the past that your nephew asked you about talking to chicks or whatever, and you're like,
Oh, yeah.
shit, I don't know, man. I've been with the same girl my whole life.
Yeah,
But
pretty much.
yeah, he's just because people, he's saying that like at his age in his 20s, it's kind of a little tricky to talk
Yeah.
to girls these days.
Yeah, I had this is years back. I had a kid ask me about going on a date and like talking to a girl, and he like didn't
So
know.
good.
Yeah, he didn't. He didn't know. This is like a cousin of mine. He didn't know what to do, and I was like, man, the only advice I have is like, don't say too much, because I think guys in particular have a tendency. Girls, it's expected. I think girls talk too much. Period. Right? Guys, we can admit it. They say way too much most of the time. But just nod your head and pretend you're into it. But I think guys have a tendency to say too much too.
Mhm.
You say something that's dumb, or you say something that's like rude, or like you just want to like put your foot in your mouth sometimes because something that you said was stupid. But the main thing I told him was like, man, just don't fart. Just like have a good time. See if you can make her laugh here and there, and be polite and stuff. But just try not to fart. And he laughed, and I was like, dude, you're laughing, but because he was going to a movie.
Mhm.
He went to like dinner and a movie. I'm like, that's a long time to not fart. I was like, you're going to feel like you're going to explode. And then I talked to him a few days later, and he was like, man, he's like, my stomach was killing me. He's like, I thought I was going to die.
It's so true.
But how to build confidence, how to build confidence when it comes to anything. That's actually a really cool question, because I actually think, in some ways, society has been changed. Well, in a lot of ways, society has been changed, because you can just communicate through text messages and stuff like that, and through apps and through different, dating things and stuff like that, which makes everything way different. It also, it's really insane to think about, but if you think about it this way, it's creating human beings that otherwise wouldn't exist. And you can make the argument for that for airplanes and for cars and trains and all these different things. Those are all things that are making human beings exist that maybe otherwise wouldn't exist, because if like for me, for example, I moved from New York to California and met my wife out here.
Mhm.
If cars and planes and stuff weren't invented, I would have never met my wife, right? If phones and the technology that we have today to text people and the apps for dating and things like
Mhm.
that, a lot of these people wouldn't be together, and the children they have obviously wouldn't exist. Like
Right.
things would be changed forever. So a lot of people just find it easier to communicate through a phone. Now, I would say that um, there's an element to the whole. There's an element of people going somewhere and then basically picking out like who they like in the room, and then talking to them, and then saying, "Hey, like we should be together."
Mhm.
To me, that sounds like very primal, and it sounds like things should be that way. And I think that through dating apps and stuff, I think that's just in my opinion, I think that's gone. I think that's lost. And I think that eventually what we might have is like, I actually think that society might slide downhill because of that in some ways, because I think that, the girl, the guy that has the confidence to get that conversation rolling, is definitely a different person than the person that has the confidence to just send a text message
Yeah.
or dick pic. So I think just things are just different now.
Hmm.
Things are different. But in terms of actually figuring out a way to work up any sort of confidence, I think the main thing is if you have confidence in yourself, then you don't have to really worry about it too much. So for me, lifting has always helped with confidence. Um, it was really just lifting. I didn't have anything else going on, and in that way, I didn't have to even pursue anybody. She just came and she talked to me. I never really tried to chase after a girl in my life because I just didn't know how to go about doing it, and I was too shy to even mess with it. So I was just like, oh, some girl at some point will, they'll get tired of all these other guys that are around,
Hmm.
or all the other guys that are around will be taken up, and somebody will like me at some point.
Yeah. So just get super jacked. Don't be an asshole and wait.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
That's cool. Um, so now that we understand like where all this came from, like you needing to get your voice out. When people do come to you, whether it be like by sliding into your DMs or whatever, yeah. Do you ever get nervous about giving people advice to follow?
No, and I think some people say, "Oh, you should talk to a doctor or whatever."
Yeah.
I've had people tell me that they want to kill themselves and all kinds of stuff, and I don't have any problem communicating with them. I think that's the world that we're in now. That's what people think about this. Think about how crazy this is. There's some 16-year-old kid DMing me on Instagram while his brother and his dad are in the other room, and he's sending me a message about how he's had thoughts about killing himself, and he's
Yeah.
probably never told his dad or his brother.
Right.
So as much as I'd love to say, "Oh yeah, you should see a doctor and you should go tell your parents," it's like, he probably there's a reason why he asked me the question rather than his parents, and so I usually don't mind, giving out advice. And obviously, I'm always if it's a kid that's that young, I'll always advise them to communicate with an adult about it that lives with them. But for the most part, I mean, what I end up recommending to a lot of people is for people to go see a therapist. And I think that everyone's so reluctant, so scared to see a therapist, but I think that it could really benefit a lot of people. Um, and there's no shame in it. Like, if you wanted to get in better shape, you don't have a problem like getting programming from somebody,
Right.
or looking at a book, right? Now, looking at a book when your head's messed up about suicidal thoughts, I don't know the impact that would have. I think talking it out would probably be superior, but that might be another option too, is to look into reading about it. Like, where are these thoughts coming from? But what I usually communicate with people is like, just it could be any problem. People have problems with their mom or their dad, or people have problems with in the relationship that they're in, or they have problems with themselves. I'll always ask them to go see a therapist, because I think that most things can be talked out, most things that can be worked out. I mean, even think about a situation where you were just fucking pissed. You're really, really furious. Let's say you got into it with your girlfriend, and you just, she hurt your feelings. She said something. I mean, usually girls that listen to this show, guys are usually mad because you hurt their feelings. That's usually what happens. It sounds like such a baby thing, but like we're a lot more sensitive and we're a little weird in some way. But
Not me, bro.
yeah, not me either, bro.
Yeah. Other people though.
Yeah, a bunch of pussies.
Yeah.
But what happens, you get really, really mad, and girls do a great job of just kind of confronting it, and guys kind of suck at it.
Yeah.
But my wife, and I don't know how everybody else is, but I'd imagine your girlfriend's probably similar, where she doesn't have any problem saying, "Andrew, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was gonna affect. I didn't mean anything by it." Like, and then everything, like, you were just so mad, and it's like just like blowing out like a candle. You're just like whoosh.
Yeah.
It's just like it's over with, and a little smoke that comes off the candle goes up in the air and fucking dissipates, and you're fine. But as men, we don't really do,
Yeah.
we don't really do that same thing that often.
Yeah. Yeah. My thing for sure is she knows right away if something's wrong, and I'm always like, nothing. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, you get quiet.
I just get quiet, but she knows right away.
Yeah, guys just get quiet, and then it drives a woman crazy because women are nosy, and they want to try to like fix.
So nosy.
They want to try to, they want to try to fix shit,
Yeah. So do you think the confidence in giving advice just comes from like what you said, putting points on the scoreboard because you have the track record to prove that like, you've been through some shit with your brothers,
Hmm.
family stuff, and then also accomplishing so much that you're okay with telling
Yeah,
someone to,
yeah, having experience and
yeah, there
stuff.
you go, the experiences. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what I was getting at.
And then even before all that happened, like I went to Australia years ago, and uh, did some seminar stuff, and I was talking to my dad, and this is before I did any sort of like public speaking stuff. I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't really know what to do. And I was halfway decent at some of that stuff at that time, but I never really got like a paid gig for it. I never had anybody offer me money. They said, hey, we'll give you like 10 grand if you want to come over and do this. And I was like, no, I don't want to like go on a 14-hour plane ride.
Hmm.
And even at the time, I didn't have any money really at the time, but
Hmm.
I still was like, I don't fucking care about 10 grand. I don't want to go that far. And most people are probably listening, going, "What? Like, why wouldn't you?" But for me, I just think of it more as like a hassle. I'm like, "Fuck that! I don't want to go do that."
Yeah.
And so I just, my wife was like, "Well," she's like, "Why don't you just tell him 20 grand, see what happens?"
Nice.
So I told the guy 20 grand, and he paid it, and then I was screwed, and then I had to go. And so yeah, so I talked to my dad, and I was like, Dad, what do you think I should do? And my dad just said, you know what? All people really are going to care about is your experiences. He's like, talk about that. He's like, between your lifting knowledge and you just talking about your experiences, you don't have to talk about anything else. He's like, you don't have to try to be funny. You don't have to try to entertain anybody. He's like, you just need to talk clear, concise, keep it simple, and just talk about, hey, I used to squat 804. But what got me to squat 804 was not the same thing to get me to squat 931. What got me to 931 wasn't the same thing to get me to 1003. Some of these basics have always been there, but I had to change things up as I got, just very, very, very simple. And just talking about the experiences that you have. Now, people that are listening right now, they might be like 23 years old, and they might say, like, I don't have shit to talk about.
Yeah.
That's okay too. It's just that you're going to want to try to figure out how to kind of like, split some of it up. Hopefully you don't have to talk for 2 hours or whatever. You just you find a specific topic and you stay in your lane and you just talk about that. Again, I was able to even have the confidence in the first place to start talking in some of those old videos that I did at yeah, well, there's a lot. There's many original super training gyms, but some of the videos I did from uh, the gym that we had in Atomis off of Norwood, some of those videos, I mean, they're on YouTube. They're on YouTube, and you can look them up. Um, I was really nervous to talk in those videos, and you can kind of see it. You can see that I was nervous. But another thing that helped too. Um, is voiceover work.
Mm.
So like what an amazing what an amazing piece of equipment that is, or what an amazing tool it is, I should say, to be able to do voiceover. So
Hmm.
if I lift, let's just say I did some deadlifts, I did some hamstring curls, I did some stiff leg deadlifts, and I did some bent over rows. I did like 4 or 5 exercises. If I cut the video up and show each lift and I do a voiceover to it, I think that anyone can do a voiceover. Now, when you listen to your voice back, you might be like, "Oh my God, I sound like a freak."
It's terrifying.
You'll get used to it over a period of time, and everybody else get used to it too.
Hmm.
When people first hear your voice, they feel the same as you do. It's an uncommon voice to them,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Who is this?" That's why the celebrity voices work so much. You see John Cena, or you hear John Cena on some stuff where there you go. You see John Cena on some stuff where he's an elephant and shit like that. It's because people recognize his voice.
So this video is from 10 years ago.
It's amazing. I look pretty fat. Yeah, 10 years ago, and I remember like we had to do takes on this and stuff like that. We had to, it just wasn't easy for me to talk, but to like I guess the main question, like where this all started was, how do you even have the that's a great word in a wrestling ring. How do you even have the confidence in the first place? If you want to look this up on YouTube, it's Team Super Training, apostrophe, Never Enough, bloopers and outtakes. But yeah, how do you even get started? How do you even get momentum in the first place? The only way you're ever going to get momentum in anything is to, oh my God, yeah, I'm watching this video of us wrestling. The only way you're going to get momentum in anything is to build confidence. The only way you're going to be able to build confidence is you're going to have to start to have habits that are reflective of your goal. So you have to, when you have goals that you want to set out to do, when you start to actually accomplish those things, it gives you momentum. That momentum will carry you into building the confidence that you need to do some of these things. When I start to think about, somebody like Joey, who is the one that kind of proposed this question, she's a young girl. She works in the store at Super Training, and I'm sure, she would either, want to work her way up the ladder in terms of what we do here at Slingshot, or maybe she has aspirations to do something much larger. But whatever it is that you're trying to do, you're just going to have to figure out a way to find what it is that you're good at. Where's your strength? You kind of hear, like, I remember when I played football, the coach would say, "Hey, you know what? If you're getting whooped up on, let us know," right? and that was, it was really rare for a player to ever do that, right? But really, that would be the sensible thing. Say, "Coach, hey, you want to put somebody else in because this guy's kicking my ass." What if the guy's too fast or whatever it was, right? We don't really do that in life. We don't really do that in work. And the other thing that we would do on the flip side of that, we would go to the coach when we thought we could handle something, we could do something. Like when I played basketball, you could see the other teams out rebounding you. Maybe say, "Coach, let me get in there. I'll fucking elbow people. I'll get scrappy, and I'll figure out a way for us to get rebounds."
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for here at Super Training. Same thing goes for any job that you have. You're going to have to let people know what you do. And if you don't let people know what you do, you'll never get enough light shined on you. So being shy and being reserved is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way things are. But you're gonna sit there and wait a lot longer than everybody else. You're gonna have to develop a lot of patience to be able to handle the fact that you're not jumping on opportunities when they're in front of you. But again, you can think about, what are some things that you can do and what are some things that you can't do? It doesn't do you any good to focus on things that you can't do, but some of the things that you can't do, maybe at some point you'll be able to do them. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, "I am so fucking terrified of public speaking, I will never be able to do it." But if you want to be able to do it, then you're going to have to be able to do it. And your level of scaredness doesn't matter. People that aren't afraid of stuff, in my opinion, are fucking stupid. When somebody's like, "I ain't afraid to fight that guy." It's like, what are you talking about? You're not afraid to fight him. Maybe you're confident in your skill level that you can handle yourself, but it doesn't make any sense to not be scared to do something. You should always be a little bit scared of anything that anything you're trying to do. That's going to be a situation that might compromise you, right?
Yeah. Do you think that when people feel fear, it's because they care? They care about the outcome.
Yeah,
of whatever it is?
well, yeah, they care, and they're also smart enough to realize, hey, this,
Yeah.
something weird could happen. I mean, you should be scared and concerned at least a little bit about just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're making a product or whether you're starting a website, or it doesn't really matter what it is. You're doing public speaking, anything. I mean, you should be concerned about the performance that you have. When it comes to actually public speaking, though, what I've learned is that it is a mistake to try to really view it as a performance, because then you put too much pressure on yourself. Something that's always worked well for me is to, again, as I talked about earlier, was talking about experiences. That way you don't have anything to forget, because you can just go off of the things that actually happen, the stories that actually happen. You're not rehearsing something that's scripted. You're not trying to. Another mistake I've made is I really like quotes a lot, right? But if I try to reference a quote that I just heard, that's not going to work, and it's going to keep my mind's going to keep thinking about that fucking quote that I want to use. but I'm not going to be able to spit it out, and it's going to kind of distract me from like communicating exactly what it is I want to communicate.
Mhm. What about like when you don't prepare, you're preparing to fail or whatever, but you're talking about like, just going with the flow, kind of freestyling it. Like, do you
Yeah.
think,
So yeah,
do you
I
think
mean,
that's
you're always
just because with reps that you've done it so much that you kind of are prepared?
yeah. Having the reps in there is critical. When I went to the Kratom movie yesterday for my brother, um, at the end they had a Q&A going,
Mm.
and everybody sat down in their chairs, and my brother called me up and he's like, okay, my brother's going to run the Q&A. And I was like, all right, I'm running the Q&A. And I just started like fucking pulling shit out of my ass, asking them questions. But I mean, I did sit there through the film. I did see what was going on. I did have some questions, so it wasn't hard. And then I just like emceed it. I hosted it, and then I asked the audience if they had questions and interacted with people, and it went well. And I think that when it comes to these things, I think people get so scared because they're trying to like rehearse something, they're trying to remember something.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to. Like if you're
Mhm.
in school and you got like a specific paper you got to go over, then you're sort of stuck with that. But even with that, you can still, if it's appropriate, you can still reflect on stories and still reflect on things that actually happened. It might be easier to communicate about those things rather than talk about something that that you're trying to like completely memorize.
Yeah. Dude, there's a Papa Bell sighting. Mike Bell.
Oh yeah, he's watching.
Yeah.
Hey now,
He said something actually really fucking awesome.
he doesn't like that word.
Sorry, he said something really awesome. Sorry, sir. He said he just wants to remind everyone to be who they are and not die a copy of someone they look up to.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, he's taught me a lot of those things. Part of the reason why people, have looked up to Babe Ruth and Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan, and Bo Jackson, and any political figure you can think of, George Washington, or anybody we make monuments of, they all have like one thing in common, and the main thing they have in common is that they're normally trying to make sure it's accurate. Yeah, they're almost always original. They're almost always pioneers of whatever it is that you're talking about. And they do things that people look at and they scratch their head and they're like, Elon Musk buying rockets from like Russia, and Elon Musk, years ago, America looked at how much it would cost to go to Mars. And they were like, it's $500 billion. And they're like, we don't have $500 billion. That's a lot of money. We can't figure that out. And Elon Musk is like, you know what? I don't care how much it costs. We're going to try to figure it out. And so rather than looking at the hurdle or rather than looking at the obstacle, I think people look at obstacles as if they're fucking brick walls. And they should really look at them as if they're hurdles. It's not going to be easy to get over it, but if you get enough momentum, you can jump over that bitch, right? So I think that's the way people need to try to view some of these things. It's not a brick wall. The $500 billion, well, maybe who researched that, right? Maybe they didn't look it up the right way. Maybe they didn't find out the correct information. Maybe there's a better fuel source. Maybe there's
They didn't carry over the one.
yeah, they didn't carry over. They didn't fucking carry the one. Yeah, maybe they just weren't as passionate about it. Like the other thing I learned from pro wrestling was somebody would do a match before you, and there's only so many different body parts you can work when you wrestle. I've mentioned this several times, but there's only so many body parts you can work. One guy's going to work an arm, one guy's going to work the back, one guy's going to work the neck. Not every wrestling match works that way because some of them are faster than others, but any match that exceeds like 8 minutes is going to have somebody working on a body part.
Right.
It's usually the bad guy is the heel, and he's usually working on the guy's leg or whatever, right? And he rams it into the ring post and puts him.
Yeah, I always liked it when they'd go back to the same body part. It's
Yeah.
like, oh no, he got his ankle again.
Yeah.
So he's going back for the ankle.
Yep, and you stay on the same one, and mysteriously, it's always the left side. Not really sure why it's always the left side, but anyway, you can figure that out on your own. But that's where all the pain is associated, and that's where they always work is on that left side. But when you saw somebody go before you, you're like, oh shit, they just worked the arm. Now I got to think of something different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're really good and you can reorganize the match, and if you didn't overly prepare and rehearse your match, you can go out there and fucking wing it, and the level 4 of a shit show match that they had won't look anything identical to the level 9 that you just put in, where you rearrange the order of the match, and it looks totally different, and maybe you did work the same body part, but so what?
It's the ability to think on your feet.
And the same thing goes for promos that we did, and the same thing goes for work. You know, one person shows you a level of work, and you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty good. And then maybe you hire somebody else, you bring somebody else in, and you're like, oh my God, I didn't know, I didn't know it could be on a whole nother level like this. This is fucking crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, you know, when it comes to these kinds of things, I think we're always just kind of we're looking at the things, the roadblocks that are in the way, and we're not really thinking about the possibility of being able to get past them. And I think that's when you're talking about like starting out and how do you have the confidence to even start. Remember, I made that Mario reference a while back, talking about when you're playing Mario Brothers back in the day, and you make that jump to try to get on that flagpole. It's a little risky, right? You gotta jump at the last second.
You gotta time it just right.
You gotta time it just right. Otherwise, you end up with a lot less points. You end up at the bottom, right? And so when you're trying to make that leap towards whatever it is that you want to do, you should at least make sure that you're close enough. You know, sometimes I hear people say stuff that's outrageous. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not going to bench 600 pounds. You haven't even benched 450 pounds yet. So you're going to want to make sure you're a lot closer to your goal before you start talking out your ass and not making any sense of it. Of course, it makes sense that you wouldn't have confidence towards such a large goal. You want your goals to be a lot shorter. And for people that are trying to start out in anything, it's going to have to start with you just putting one foot down. It sounds repetitive, right? I say it all the time, and get one foot in front of the other. So what? You did something and it sucks. That's okay. It's a start. You started. You went. Go back and listen to some of Andy Frisella's early podcasts. They suck. He'll tell you they suck. You know, listen to some of the early podcasts I did. They're going, hopefully, if you do things for a long time and you care about it, hopefully over a period of time, you'll get better at it. And if it comes to like public speaking, which can be really challenging, you're also going to find out like maybe that you're not good at it, which is fine. You'll find your way, and you'll find your own thing. You look at somebody like Carrot Top, right, who's made money for 20 years doing stand-up comedy. But what does he do? He has props, right? So it's like he has his own thing. Maybe without the props, maybe he doesn't do a very good job.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe he's not funny.
Is he still jacked?
He's fucking jacked. Yeah, bring him up.
Yeah.
He's really jacked. He actually trains at Gold Gym in Venice, and he's like, I don't know, he's got some arms on him. I'd say 17s, 18s, and he's pretty lean. He's probably on a little bit of carrot juice.
Carrot juice.
You know what I mean?
Well,
yeah.
Iffy
Yeah, look at those
picture,
shoulders. Yeah, he looked like he might have injected something in those shoulders.
but no,
Little pocket sticking out of there.
he's just on the vertical diet with carrots.
Oh yeah,
That's all that is.
that's gotta be it. Yeah, and then I mean, you know I talked kind of quite a bit about public speaking, but in general, you know, to get started, there has to be some sort of backbone to something, and that's what I've always prided myself in, is that I had a lifting career, so it made things easier. It made it easier for me to talk about a squat when I squatted 900 pounds. When you go back and you look at those videos that I made with Jim McD, those are 10, 11 years ago, but I was already lifting something, so it wasn't hard to talk about it. If I sucked at it, it would be a lot more difficult. And also, something I forgot to mention earlier is that when you're thinking about what it is you're going to do, and one way to build confidence in it is to pick something that there's not as much competition in. So for me, with powerlifting, how many powerlifting coaches were sharing information at the time? And the answer is really none. Even though there was Louis Simmons, all he did was write in Powerlifting USA. He didn't really do much else. Dave Tate was somebody that took the reins in that field, and he was somebody that I worked under the name Jackass, and that's kind of where I got my my feet wet. This is amazing watching me try to set up because I'm like so fat that I can't get down to the bar. I got to like pull myself down in a position.
How much were
Look at
you?
these.
How much were you weighing right there?
Look
Do you
at these
remember?
terrible lockouts. It's
Oh,
awful. Oh, blew out my back. um, I'd say right there I'm probably 280, so 280 or so. Most of the time when I wasn't competing, I didn't really see a reason to be. Well, actually, I'm sorry. At this time, I competed a lot, so I was gonna say like a lot of times I didn't see the reason to be 300 plus. I'd stay a little bit lighter. Um, After every meet, I'd always lose weight. I'd actually, even though I'm fat as bloated as fuck, I'd always get on a diet and just try to lose some of that bloat. I just always felt it was unhealthy, and I didn't really like the way that it felt. But obviously, I'm still very bloated. But if you can imagine, I'd be even more bloated on game day.
jeez. I mean, now, like, since, I've been here, I actually can't imagine you forcing yourself to be bloated.
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, some of it was fun. People just they don't. As I kind of mentioned in the beginning of the show, is that people are going to be oblivious to the sacrifices that you go through.
hmm
But then one day they're also going to say, "Hey, man, what you're doing is great," and you go, "What?" Because you're kind of oblivious to it too, because you've been doing it for so long. When somebody says, "Oh my God, benching over 500 pounds or doing it for some reps is great," or the message that you're sharing is great, it's all the byproduct of doing it for a long time. It's all the byproduct of practicing it. It's all the byproduct of caring about it. It's the byproduct of making choices to choose one thing over the other. I'm choosing to be here right now instead of being at my house with my family eating dinner. You make these choices, and the word sacrifice is like almost too severe, because it's like I don't like have to be here. It's my choice to be here, and I would say that a sacrifice is probably more like when you're kind of more forced to do something, like if you're in the military or something like that. But
hmm
it's the choices that you make are going to kind of guide you through some of that. For some people that are lost and that don't know where to turn and don't know where to start, it's got to start with, you're going to have to build confidence in something, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Or if you're trying to start a business or you're trying to start a YouTube channel, you really won't have anything to talk about if you're not confident in whatever it is that you're doing. So hopefully you'll have some experience in doing that. If you feel like that you shouldn't do it, then you shouldn't do it, and you should just wait. There's nothing wrong with waiting. I didn't know what I was doing for a really long time. Even in those videos that are 10 years ago,
hmm
I'm still 31 years old, it takes a lot of time. And if you're 35 or 40 when you figure it out, so what? As long
hmm
as you can hang in there, as long as you can survive.
Yeah, and being ignorant, or what is it? Ignorance is bliss, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know Ron Penna said that about starting Quest.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if I knew what it took to
Yeah.
actually make a bar, we never would have made it.
Yeah, I was definitely very ignorant in starting out, because it's not like I felt like I knew it all, but I just felt like I had something to offer, and so I was able to go from there. And
hmm
if you feel like that you're not going to provide a service to people, then maybe you should choose to do something different or do something differently. It doesn't mean you have to like give up on whatever it is you're trying to do. There's some people, and we've had people here. We've had people on our show that fucking suck. We've had people on the podcast that absolutely suck. They're great on Instagram and they suck on the podcast, or they're great for YouTube but they're not good for or vice versa, right?
hmm
And it's because you're only going to be good at so many different things, and you have to figure out what those things are. What does that look like? Maybe you're somebody that can build a good following on Instagram because you're in really good shape. But maybe when it comes to talking on camera, you just can't figure it out, right? You can't figure out how to. And then you have some people that start to kind of figure out multiple platforms, multiple ways of communicating, and you got like you end up with like a Bradley Martin, or some of the guys that like, I don't know if you ever seen six pack abs on YouTube. They got like 7 million followers or something.
Shit.
They got crushed and they got ridiculed a lot years ago because they were doing some weird stuff, but they put out really good content. And there's other people too, when it's a combination of they look good, they've been working hard for many years, they're shredded, and they're able to speak upon the topic that, and then that's when you end up with a very professional looking product in the end, rather than just being good at one thing. You end up being good at multiple things. It ends up starting to kind of turn into something stronger.
When do you know when's a good time to kind of turn it off? Like you're talking about like working through all these things, outlasting everybody. Like I know you just got back from like vacation, but even on vacation you were still working.
Yeah.
You recorded a podcast out there too.
Yeah, I don't think you ever
cool.
turn it off. I think you just keep rolling, man. I don't think there's any reason. When does Stan Efforting, when does Stan Efforting go off the vertical diet?
Right.
He doesn't, right? He just keeps that train rolling. Now you don't have to be a psychopath about it. Like he's in a different category, but that's what he likes to do. So you'll have to you have to kind of balance it out with what you like to do. And I think that a lot of stuff that we're trying to do, at least all I ever try to do, I try to just figure out ways to mitigate stress. Because I'm like, the job that I have is something that I chose to do. I chose to do it this way, and I just rather not overthink stuff. I'd rather, if I feel like eating ice cream, I within the next 3 days of me thinking about it, I'll probably eat it, right? Because I don't even want the stress of that. And I work very hard towards my goals, and I do the best I possibly can with them. But I think my life works a lot better if I'm at like an 8 rather than like a 12, right?
That makes sense.
If I'm not fucking crazy about it, it seems to work out better anyway. The harder that I chase after it, the faster it seems to fucking run away from me too. If I'm like, you know what, I have to weigh 220. I have to weigh 220. If I just keep pounding that in my head, I probably will never get there, or I probably will not be even that excited about when I get there, because I'll probably just have to like not eat to get there. If I take my time to get there, then I can do it as I have been doing, and do it in stages, and just let it happen. Let it happen in spurts, right? And then that way I can go off the diet, I can come back to the diet, I can keep switching things up. Same thing with increasing my strength. I made a post the other day that I'm going to start working on trying to build that back up again. I am going to work on building that back up again, but it's realistically probably going to keep going downward for a little while, because I'm going to still try to lose some weight, and I'm trying to incorporate running. So you have to be realistic with all the different things that are going on, and take all those things into consideration. I'm not going to bench 500 pounds tomorrow, but I will bench 500 pounds at some point. Again, it's gonna take a little while, and I'd like to do it, at 220 pounds. It's just a goal. I've benched over 500 pounds for the last, I don't know, 12 years or something like that. So it's not anything hard for me to do, but it does take a hell of a concentrated effort. I need to really pay attention to it. And if I chase after it too hard, I'll get hurt. I will get injured if I don't take my time really to a lot of times when you're trying to get to a goal, a destination, you ultimately, first of all, you find out that it's not a real destination. It's just a number. It's just a goal that you have, and it doesn't really mean a whole lot. It just means that you got to your goal. But powerlifting is almost like a race that doesn't have any finish lines, because every time that you quote unquote cross a finish line, you're like, oh, there's another 10
one on the horizon,
another fucking 10 pounds. And Smokey keeps ordering more and more weight here, so
yeah,
it's impossible to lift all the weight that we have here at Super Training.
He's curled all the weights.
But you're never satisfied. You always want to lift. You always want to lift more. There's always new and different goals that pop up. But if you go after them too hard, you're gonna get punched in the face for it. Mikhail Kokulev, in a seminar, he took a what was it, an Olympic lifting or Olympic gymnastics ring. He took the Olympic gymnastics ring, and it was out in front of him, and he reached forward for it, and he grabbed it, and he pulled it towards him. And he said, "Lifting weights is like pretty girl." So he grabbed this ring again, I'll say it again, and pulled it towards his face. And this was representing pretty girl, right? And he said, the more you reach for it, the more you pull it towards you. And then he opened up his hand. He said, the more it goes away from you. And that's the way a lot of your goals are too. When you just sit there and try to fucking pound them into your head, it doesn't really work that way. You want to work towards them every day, but you can't make it happen any faster. There's only a certain amount of stuff you can get done in a day. You need to sleep 8 hours in a day. You need to have time for eating. You can't turn your 8 hours sleep into a 6 hour sleep. You can't turn your 10-minute walks into a 4-minute walk. There's things just take a certain amount of time. It takes a long time for people to develop too as human beings, and to be able to have perspective into other people's lives is a huge element. It's a huge game changer for me. I mean, I still think people are pieces of shit. I don't like a lot of people, but I'm lightening up as I get a little older and starting to understand, well, maybe the guy's not a total piece of shit, or maybe he is. Now, having perspective is a crucial thing, and just understanding where people come from. I'm very fortunate. I grew up with a mom and dad that loved each other. My dad fucking winked at my mom on the bus when they were 12 or 13 years old, and they've been together ever since. And there was a lot of love in our family. There was a lot of food in our family. That's why we're all so fat. But like everything was like easy. There was nothing hard. I mean, I remember my brother Mike, his situation was hard, but he was bipolar, so it's like, what are you going to do? There's going to be some adversity kind of mixed in there, and we tried to do the best we could with it as a family. But other than that, I mean, everything, growing up was awesome. My dad worked really hard. He wasn't always around, when I was maybe like in my teenage years or so, or maybe even a little bit before that. And I started wondering, like, where the fuck is he? And then as I got, maybe another year or two older and got a little more mature, I was like, oh, that's why we have all this cool shit, because he's working his ass off. I'm like, okay. But I mean, my mom was always there. My dad was always there. They all went to every game. My aunts and uncles and grandparents would come to games. We all hung out for Christmas and Thanksgiving and all these different things. So when I start to think about why somebody acts a certain way, or why somebody does something, or why somebody maybe is just pissed off, like maybe somebody's just mad, or maybe I can start to kind of think, well, maybe, or if they act a particular way all the time, then I can start to say, well, maybe they didn't pick the same parents that I did. Maybe they weren't fortunate enough to have some of that. And I do think there is a time, hey, you know what, tough shit. Yeah. Right? Like it's life. Whether you were abused, or it doesn't matter what happened to you, you ultimately have to be an adult. You ultimately have to be responsible for your own actions, and you cannot be an asshole just because you were molested as a kid. It's like, it's a horrible thing to say, because, people are dealing with different circumstances, but you do have to still be a fucking human being. You still have to figure out a way to survive. You still have to figure out a way to be good to other people, right? Mm-hmm.
You still have the same 24 hours to get shit done.
You still got the same 24-hour clock, bitch. Anything else? Anything you want to add?
Yeah.
Whoa! Holy shit!
So
look at those biceps.
By popular
we just pulled
demand.
up a picture of Smokey, and he's looking huge. He kind of did the people's eyebrow in that picture.
Double bicep and a people's eyebrow.
Yeah,
dude.
I've been working on trying to get Jay Cutler here, and it's been tough. And I think he's intimidated by it.
I was gonna say, you scared him away.
Yeah, look at the peaks on those biceps. Those are no joke. Those are up above the shoulder. They're up above the delt. And some people might look at it negative and say the delt's not big enough, and other people are going to say, look at those biceps.
So the Smokey shirt goes on sale tomorrow at noon, right? Yeah.
Does he have really big biceps, or his forearms just really scrawny? It's hard to say.
Let's see here. Whoa.
Wow.
Look at that guy.
That beard's looking good.
He left a bunch of... Oh, never mind. I don't even want to talk about your pubes or beards on the white backdrop. We were taking product shots. It looked nasty. It was all bad.
Yeah,
Anyway.
his beard is a little puby, huh? I never felt his pubes, but I did feel his beard, and it felt puby to me.
Probably similar. Yeah, they are. Good to know. Anyway, so I brought up this this picture because those shirts go on sale tomorrow. So if you're listening to this live,
Hey, with this is a interesting question. With white
Okay.
people, aren't our hair on our head and our pubes are different, right? But now that we have a mix in here, we should maybe have
take a poll. Carpet.
I mean,
match
he's
the
got
drapes.
he's got like kind of an afro on his head, and maybe he's got a maybe he's got an afro around his. I don't know. Anyway.
Anyway, so tomorrow at noon, head over to Mark Bell Slingshot, get your Smoky T-shirt. While you're there, pick up a Slingshot, enter code Power Project for 15% off all Slingshots.
Damn, Smokey's jacked. I need to start lifting weights.
That's all I got for you, buddy.
All right, that's it. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never a strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.